Let's talk about the new developments in New Batumi. Right now I'm in the Lech and Maria Kaczynski Park. As you can see, all these residential complexes were built within the last 5 years. In other words, this is an entirely new district that has sprung up and appeared quite recently. What's interesting is that many people here are once again chasing returns with these projects, investing money in hopes of making a profit by reselling, earning from price increases, from rentals and so on. Let's start with this black building over here. As you can see, it's been standing here for quite a while. Its central part is operational. There's a casino on the ground floor and the central part is a hotel. The side sections where people bought apartments have been standing unfinished for many years, and it's still unclear when all of this will be put into operation, because the head of this project was sentenced to a long prison term and, well, people just don't know when they'll finally get their apartments. This is the White Sea complex, which is currently operational. They promised a large infrastructure here. As you can see, there's an Ibis brand here. It has several separate lower floors and its own infrastructure. Everyone else makes do with a pool, a few cafes, a shop, and that's basically it. And then there's this part, the Grandeur. These are also separate apartments. They operate independently, have their own infrastructure, and are somewhat set apart from the rest. For all these reasons, the price in the complex ranges from about 1,800 to 2,200 if we're talking about units with the best views. And for those investing now, don't expect the price here to rise significantly. The price will stay roughly within these same ranges and nothing will change. If you want to earn from renting, then here it's the same as in other complexes in Batumi. The average monthly rental rate in the off-season, since it's unlikely you'll be renting daily rentals just don't do well here, is about $300 to $400. And accordingly, in the high season, it's generally from $30 to $60 per day, usually at most. Accordingly, if you multiply this by the property price, you'll get a gross yield of about 7 to 8%, and net, well, if you're lucky, you'll end up with 4 to 5%, sometimes maybe even less, because it's unlikely that the management company here will provide you with any significant income. But if you find a specialist who will rent out your apartment for you, you might end up with around 5%, or ideally, maybe even 6%. But again, that's a yield on par with dollar inflation. This green project, Batumi View, is about the same, just a bit more expensive, mainly because it's located right on the waterfront. And the apartment prices there are also a little higher. In fact, behind these economy projects, all of this you see here are economy projects. There is the Elt Quarter, which probably has the cheapest economy class housing, but it also comes with its own nuances. Don't expect to get the high level of quality there, although you can buy something for about $1,400 to $1,500 per square meter in the comfort class. And over there, behind the little fir trees, there's another complex, which can also be considered as conditional comfort class. That's all for the comfort class housing. Everything beyond that, the second row, and over there, there's a huge number of projects under construction. These are all economy projects. I've explained in a separate article why you shouldn't get involved with economy projects. You can follow the link and read it on my Telegram channel. I won't go into it now because it would just take too long. Overall, the area is interesting because it's new and because there really is a good, beautiful park here. There are some minor shortcomings, but overall it's pleasant. It's nice to take a walk here and it looks good. There are many different kinds of trees planted here. There are children's play areas, a skate park, and other joys of life. So from this point of view, it's actually quite a pleasant little neighborhood. With one downside, there aren't any really cool projects here, at least of business class or premium class. They haven't appeared here yet, and unfortunately, even in the plans or construction projects, they're still not present. Unfortunately, there's absolutely nothing to buy here in this area for investment either. I've gone through and double-checked many complexes, and clients have come to me with this question more than once. No matter how you calculate it, the numbers always come out to around 5% annual return. You can calculate it with a mortgage, you can calculate it with an installment plan if developers offer one, but due to the lack of price appreciation and rather low rental rates, the returns are not attractive enough to invest money here for any significant period. In my opinion, the most unclear, almost fantastical place to invest your money in Batumi is Angisa Street. I'll try to explain this story to you now, so you can also understand why I think this way. By fantastical, I mean in terms of the pointlessness of investing there. What attracts many people to invest here is that it's still the first line from the sea. Here you can see the sea, yes, everything is very close. Some buildings are on the first line, some on the second. But overall, all these residential complexes of varying heights, but generally over 25 stories, are built window to window. I'll show you some aerial footage now so you can get an idea of what it looks like. Besides the fact that all this so-called beauty is built window to window, it also has very low construction quality. And most of these projects take well over 5 years to build. Why more than 5 years? Because they started building them for very little money. Developers were selling them for around $600, some a bit less, some a bit more. But still, that money was definitely not enough to build even a remotely decent project, right? Many didn't even have enough to finish an economy class project. So here, most of the projects were marketed as comfort class in the pictures, but in reality they're economy class projects because the materials used are very cheap. There's no soundproofing, the waterproofing in most cases is done very poorly, there's practically no ventilation, there are issues with the electrical systems, and many other problems as well. Again, you can read more in a separate article about the shortcomings of Batumi's economy class housing. So why do people buy this real estate then, you might ask, given it's such low quality and concept? It's all because it's very cheap, yes. And most realtors sell it. Someone comes in asking for something cheaper near the sea, and welcome, people buy it. They realize what they've bought a bit later, because in reality there are actually a lot of options to buy here, even cheaper than what is being sold. But when you want to sell this property, you'll face the fact that you'll have to look for the same kind of people, those who also love terrible quality for cheap, on the first line. And believe me, finding them might not be as easy as it was for you to find this property. Why is that? Well, let's imagine you find and buy an apartment here with finishing, say, for $1,000 per square meter or for $1,100. Of course, when you buy it, everything seems fine, but after living there for 2 or 3 months, you start to realize what you've actually bought and what it's like to live with it. If you rent it out short term, well, there's a huge amount of competition here from higher class projects, and all of it rents out for more or less the same price. That's why, of course, a tenant who knows even a little bit will read reviews on Booking or Airbnb. First and foremost, they'll choose a property that's higher class, more interesting, with better reviews, and so on. If you want to live there year-round, of course, you'll experience all the realities of life in this property. The apartments you can buy with a direct sea view, with a view of the park, right now, I'm showing them to you. They are unreasonably expensive, yes. They cost even more than apartments in comfort class buildings simply because of the view. Yes, but if this view also came with good quality real estate, then the price would be justified and understandable. But as you can see, just pay attention to the distance between the buildings. Most of what you can buy cheaply will be window to window, facing into this street, and accordingly, well, I think you all understand what that means, what happens with the light, with the sun, with mold, and all the other issues that come as part of the package with a low price. So when you suddenly decide to sell the property, you'll have to look for someone who, again, is really into something very, very cheap. But what's special about these people who are looking for super cheap prices, like getting a first line to the sea for very little and so on? These people will bargain with you and they'll haggle with you until the very end. And don't expect them to pay you even a penny more for the value you once bought. These people also come in to buy at the lowest possible price. And as for margin or profit in this case, well, that's a very, very rare occurrence. Even if you do manage to make some money, it will most likely be just a pittance. Friends, this is what the houses look like on Angisa Street. You can see that it's literally window to window. There are many of them and they're all multi-story buildings. Some apartments get sunlight, but that's far from the majority of them. And honestly, I don't see the point of this kind of construction. But of course, the developers, since they once managed to snatch up some plots of land, possibly even at low prices, are now trying to squeeze the absolute maximum out of all this. They sell these at the initial stage for quite cheap. Naturally, as I've said many times before, by selling cheaply, they often don't even have the means to actually finish the construction. That's why all this construction takes a very long time, many, many years. And some projects, like this one, for example, well, it will probably be under construction for another, I don't know, but it feels like another 5 years or so, even though it's already been under construction for about 7 years. And by the way, there are some very fortunate and incredibly lucky people who managed to successfully purchase property here, yes. That is, considering the significant fact that it's not even entirely clear when this entire project will be truly finished at all. The actions and motivations of such people are a mystery to me, but nevertheless they manage to find each other. I mean, the developers and the buyers. Many people who like to have an apartment by the sea and want to preserve their money in seaside real estate, let's call it that, they love to buy property on the first line by the sea. Naturally, developers know this, and for the developer, the land is as expensive as possible. Well, if they want to build a project at least somewhat close to the sea. At the same time, they usually sell them very cheaply at the start. And with this whole story, of course, by selling cheaply, the developer can't build anything of even remotely decent quality. That's why in most new buildings, they saved a lot on materials. This includes things like double glazed windows where the wind blows right through, and a lack of waterproofing, and where there's no waterproofing, there's mold hand in hand with all the other issues. So accordingly, most of the projects you can buy will be of very, very mediocre quality. What else is a major problem? All these residential complexes on the first and second lines are filled from a single source: Booking, Airbnb. If you know, Booking and Airbnb can fill these properties during the season, even if it's for cheap, but in the off-season they absolutely can't manage it. Why? Because the supply of housing, the number of apartments available for rent exceeds the demand. That is, in the off-season, the majority, about 70%, of the apartments either stand empty or the owners rent them out monthly for very cheap. That's why the profitability over the 4 months of the season, of course, doesn't cover all the other months. And the annual yield ends up being around 5%, depending on the option, on who is renting it out, on the management company. But overall, most management companies here, frankly, are just not up to par. They're not up to par, of course, in terms of the returns that people who invest their money in this real estate expect.